In October 1347, a fleet of dying sailors docked in Sicily. Within 6 years, the Black Death would kill up to 200 million people and erase as much as 2/3 of Europe's entire population. For centuries, this was understood as a story of near total death. Then a forgotten medieval parchment surfaced with evidence that changes everything we thought we knew about who survived and how. 12 Genoese galleys carried this invisible terror into the harbor of Messina. The Franciscan friar Michele da Piazza recorded how the contagion penetrated to the very marrow of the sailors' bones, leaping immediately from the pestilent decks to the unsuspecting townspeople on shore. From this single Sicilian foothold, the outbreak transformed from a localized port crisis into an unstoppable continental wave. Over the next 6 years, the pathogen traced the arteries of medieval commerce, radiating outward to Genoa, Venice, and Marseille, before sweeping northward through the fertile Rhine Valley and eastward into Bohemia. Entire communities vanished as the mortalities mounted, ultimately claiming between 75 million and 200 million lives across the globe. This was a demographic catastrophe without precedent, extinguishing roughly 1/3 to 2/3 of the European population. No army could match this lethal efficiency. Without a single iron sword drawn, the invisible enemy claimed thousands of victims daily as it worked its way inland. The sheer speed of the advance overwhelmed every traditional defense, transforming a routine maritime arrival into a civilizational emergency that threatened to completely unravel the entire social fabric of the medieval world. Modern science identifies the microscopic killer as Yersinia pestis, a highly virulent bacterium. In the 14th century, this pathogen relied on a hidden transmission chain that medieval populations could not see. The bacteria multiplied inside the digestive tracts of fleas, which lived on the black rats nesting in granaries, cargo ships, and thatched roofs. When the rat hosts succumbed to the infection, the starving fleas abandoned the cold carcasses and sought out human hosts, transmitting the bacterium through their bites. Once inside the human bloodstream, the physical assault began with sudden chills, exhaustion, and violent sneezing fits. The bacteria quickly migrated to the lymphatic system, causing the lymph nodes in the groin, armpits, and neck to swell into agonizing dark tumors called buboes. These painful, plum-sized swellings turned deep purple and black as blood pooled beneath the skin, sometimes rupturing with foul-smelling fluids. As the infection invaded other vital organs, the body's internal defenses collapsed, triggering extreme fevers, the vomiting of black blood, and severe diarrhea. The progression from health to grave was exceptionally swift. Many victims died within a fatal window of just 2 to 7 days after their first symptoms appeared, often passing from perfect health to death in less than 48 hours. This extreme speed of mortality, combined with the gruesome physical breakdown of the body, stripped away any hope of survival. The disease was a rapid, violent assault on the flesh that made the threat feel immediate, terrifying, and entirely inescapable to everyone who witnessed it. As the mortality rose, the fragile systems of medieval care disintegrated. Those duty-bound to comfort the dying often chose self-preservation. Many physicians fled infected cities, sometimes demanding exorbitant upfront cash payments before they would even touch a patient's pulse. Members of the clergy, terrified of catching the breath of the dying, shut themselves away, leaving thousands to perish without receiving their last rites. For ordinary families, this transformed the end of life into an experience of absolute isolation. Parents abandoned children, and spouses fled from each other, leaving the sick to die alone in locked rooms. At the bedside, the available medical help offered no protection. Ignorant of microscopic transmission, medieval doctors relied on the ancient theory of bodily humors. They sliced open veins for bloodletting, which only accelerated hemorrhagic shock and drained the patient's remaining strength. They lanced agonizing buboes and applied warm poultices of onions, garlic, and butter, opening raw wounds that invited secondary infections. With no effective treatments, social order fractured entirely. In communities across Europe, the living could no longer keep pace with the dead. Bodies were left unburied in homes, alleys, and fields, turning ordinary spaces into silent, open graveyards. Entire settlements were abandoned as survivors fled into the countryside, carrying the seeds of the pathogen with them. This collapse of hands-on care and the forced separation of families reveals a terror that echoes even in the modern era. During the worst surges of the COVID-19 pandemic, the world witnessed a similar strain on health systems, where the fear of contagion forced patients into strict isolation, leaving families unable to hold the hands of their dying loved ones. In 1348, the Venetian Senate enacted a policy to guard its lagoon. They mandated that all arriving ships, crews, and cargo remain isolated in the harbor for 40 days before landing. This period of isolation was called a quarantino, the linguistic ancestor of the modern quarantine. Though Venetian authorities lacked any understanding of viral or bacterial biology, archival toll records from the period show this administrative measure worked, producing a measurable decline in infected arrivals. It was a primitive but effective public health breakthrough, echoing the lockdowns and isolation protocols of the modern COVID-19 pandemic. Yet unlike 21st century measures backed by genomic sequencing and rapid diagnostics, medieval Venice acted in near total darkness, relying solely on observation and strict civic enforcement. While Venice sought order through administration, others turned to ritualistic fanaticism. Originating in Perugia, the flagellant brotherhoods swept across the continent, offering a desperate, emotional response to what they believed was divine wrath. In cities like Strasbourg and Tournai, thousands of penitents marched through the streets in highly coordinated, self-punishing spectacles. They whipped their own flesh with iron-tipped scourges, spilling blood onto the cobblestones to appease an angry god. This religious panic quickly turned outward. Seeking a human scapegoat for the invisible terror, these processions frequently incited violent pogroms against Jewish populations, transforming communal grief into a campaign of terror. In May 2026, researchers at Durham University re-examined a single scrap of parchment inserted into the 14th century manorial accounts of Ramsey Abbey. This document, from the Huntingdonshire village of Warboys, recorded something historians rarely see: the names of 22 peasants who fell ill during the summer of 1349. Instead of listing deaths, the parchment detailed their absences and their return to agricultural labor after a recovery window of 3 to 4 weeks. This archival evidence reframes the pandemic as a struggle for survival, rather than inevitable doom, providing concrete proof of human resilience amid the disaster. With half of Europe's workforce buried in mass graves, those who survived stepped into a radically transformed economy. Landowners, desperate for hands to harvest rotting crops, faced a severe labor shortage. Ordinary peasants suddenly held the bargaining power, demanding and winning wage increases of 30 to 50%. This sudden wealth transformed daily life. Survivors ate better food, built sturdier timber-framed homes, and enjoyed longer, healthier lives. But the shift was also psychological. Flush with coin and haunted by the fragility of existence, ordinary people began a spending spree, buying fine woolens, imported silks, and luxury goods once reserved only for the nobility, a material rebellion against the memory of death. The spiritual monopoly of the medieval church shattered alongside the population. As the clergy died in equal proportion to their flocks, the institution's inability to halt the pestilence eroded public trust. These institutional fractures cleared the path for both the secular humanism of the Renaissance and the systemic critiques of the Protestant Reformation. Survival became a slow, structural force, yet Europe required 2 centuries to restore its pre-plague population baseline. Much like the deep institutional strains following modern pandemics, the true aftershocks of the Black Death unfolded over generations, quietly rewriting the terms of human authority. We are the direct descendants of those who survived the dark. Today, as modern contagions revive ancient fears, the lesson of the plague remains absolute. Survival is never merely biological. It is defined by how we choose to rebuild. Share your thoughts in the comments below.